Hello and welcome to this week's episode of John's Garage. This week we're incredibly lucky. The owner of this Mitsubishi FTO contacted me and said, John, I own the best condition Mitsubishi FTO in Ireland and I would love for you to put it on the channel. So this week we're having a look around a 2000 registered Mitsubishi FTO MiVEC Aero GP. This is the top of the range. This is as high as it got ever from Mitsubishi, and the condition of this car is unreal. So let's take a little bit of a look around it and see what we can see. Okay, so before we jump into it, let's talk a little bit around the FTO. What is it? Originally, the FTO was a model built by Mitsubishi back in 1970 to 72. It was a rear-wheel drive coupe based on the Mitsubishi Galant. And this particular FTO was no different. This is also based on Mitsubishi Galant platform, although heavily modified. The Mitsubishi Galant was a big saloon and a big estate car. This obviously is not that, okay? Originally released in 1994 by Mitsubishi, it got Car of the Year Japan in that year. It was the first sports car, I should say, since the Toyota MR2 in 1984, which also got Car of the Year in Japan. So two brilliant sports cars. It is possibly, some say, the best sports car produced in Japan during the 1990s and early 2000s. Now that irks Honda fans because they'll all say, oh, no, John, it's DC2, it's an Integra. That's the best. This is also considered to be right up there with the Integra, but here and now possibly not as well known, all right? It was produced by Mitsubishi from 1994 until 2000, and then crash regulations around side impact protection pretty much finished this car, the FTO and also the GTO, in the same year because it would have been too expensive to modify given the modest sales that it was achieving. So what else can I tell you about this? What does FTO stand for? Does it actually stand for anything, or is it just a collection of letters to make the car look cool? No, it does actually have a meaning, and it harks back to the Italian, but I can't pronounce the Italian, but I'm going to tell you in English what it means. Fresh touring origination. It goes back to the freshness, the novelness of the original GTO, or FTO I should say, that was released in the early 70s. Okay, so they used the designation again for this particular model. What exactly is it? We have front engine, front wheel drive, and in this particular format, a manual gearbox. Okay, that's it. Car develops about 197 horsepower. We'll talk more about the facts and figures around the engine in a little while, okay? Now, most of these, the vast majority, including this particular one, were JDM market models only. So they were only ever meant to be sold new in the Japanese market. However, such was the demand for this car that eventually Mitsubishi relented and began to supply them to other right-hand drive markets, although in a very, very limited format. And I would love if anybody has an original Irish one of these from the year 2000, would you let me know in the comments underneath, because they're incredibly rare. So what do I mean by that? So around 1998, after the facelift model, which this particular one is, came in 97, they sold a few of these new through main dealers in New Zealand, then into Australia. Then they brought it in the year 2000, just before production ended, they brought it to Ireland and the UK and supplied some new to some customers in around the year 2000. I have no official figures of how many of these particular models were sold in Ireland. So it'll be really interesting to find out if somebody out there still has one, okay? It is still considered to be one of the best handling front-wheel drive sports cars from Japan of the 90s. Okay, so that's right up where it is. Am I going to say it's better than the Honda Integra? That's up for you to decide. I'd say it's as good, but maybe a bit different. The Integra has a lovely four-cylinder rasp off the exhaust. I would say this being a V6, it's probably got more power, but maybe doesn't have that nice rasp, okay? It does have a lovely hum off it though, but it's a lot smoother in terms of driving, okay? So, what else can I tell you about this particular car? This one is in Scotia white. I'm trying to remember, Scotia white, and that means it also has the contrasting blue interior. The Aero GP model, of course, for those who are well up in their FTO knowledge, will know that this particular one is actually a stripped out kind of track car, is essentially the way I'll put it. So there's a couple of different modifications to it, including stiffer torsion bars front and rear to improve performance. It doesn't have any more power or anything like that, but it certainly has modifications like that. It also has a couple of other modifications, and I'll talk to you about those when we get inside and when we're walking around the car. We'll have a little bit of a talk about what they are that makes this particular one a little bit different from a normal MiVEC or Aero, but this being the Aero GP, there's a couple of other modifications of its own. So I think without further ado, let's jump under the bonnet and talk about the power. Okay folks, so we're under the power barn here of the FTO GR VR Aero. Okay, so what have we got here? We have 197 horsepower, available at 7,500 RPM. This particular engine, you can see, is transversely mounted. This is the V6, and the V6 is transversely mounted. There was another engine option available also, which was the 1.8 litre. And the 1.8 litre was a 4-cylinder inline engine, so you had different engine configurations based on the engine size. There was also just a standard 2-litre MiVEC, which was also V6, which was also mounted transversely also. Now, what is MiVEC? What are we talking about here? Essentially, it's Mitsubishi's variable valve timing system. It's available from startup, however, you need to get the revs up, and second of all, you need to have the engine warmed up. Otherwise, if you hit 4,500 RPMs and this car isn't warmed up, the variable valve system will not kick in, okay? You'll actually be limited in power and what you can do. Again, V6, so I was kind of mentioning earlier on about the Honda Integra and saying that, you know, in handling terms and in power figures and all that, it's pretty much a match for it. But this being a V6, it's a different type of engine. It's much smoother, much quieter. And I did say the Integra had a nicer 4-cylinder raspy note off it, which it does. Of course, being the MiVEC V6, you also have direct overhead camshaft and 24 valve system as well, which can kind of make servicing costs a little bit more expensive. This particular one is by and large standard, apart from obviously the air intake system over here. But other than that, it's a pretty standard car. There has been very little modifications done. And as you can see, looking under the bonnet here, it's beautifully original, very well presented. Nice and original, not glossed up, not modified, not painted, apart from obviously the strut brace. But that's it. It's beautiful, okay? Now, what else can I tell you about these particular models while we're under here and underneath the bonnet? Well, in total, about 36,000 of these were produced in right-hand drive for the Japanese market. They were only ever available in right-hand drive. They were never a left-hand drive model. In the year 2000, okay, the FTO GR VR Aero, there was 56 produced. So there was only 56 of this particular model ever produced in that year. Now, of this particular model, okay, so I need to qualify that. So in the year 2000. Now, overall, when it comes to the FTO GR VR Aero, how many were produced? 370. So this is still a really rare car. Of the 370, 240 were manual, which is probably the more desirable, but there was also an automatic, and it's worth talking about that automatic, which was fitted to about 140 cars. Now, this is across the range, actually, that automatic across the range for the FTO was actually a Tiptronic system. And it worked in two modes. It had two different modes. You could put it into tip, which is where you would change gears, and Tiptronic was referred to where it was automatic, essentially. It's actually a pretty good system. Okay, it's a pretty good system based on and modelled on the Porsche system, Tiptronic system, which would have been available during the 2000s as well. Works reasonably effectively. I will say it probably blunts the performance, but it's an automatic, so it's probably going to do that no matter what. But other than that, it's not actually a bad old shout in these. But I'd say the 5-speed manual is the way to go. If you're a driver and enthusiast and want to enjoy the car, just get the manual. The owner of this, really lucky person. They imported this before values started to rise in Japan, and I mean just before. They got really lucky, got it in, got it all registered in Ireland, and have had no problems with it since. It's been an absolutely excellent car. You can tell by the paintwork and the bodywork, it's lovingly cared for. And one of the things the owner invested in this car, and I'd highly urge anybody to do it, is to contact Taft's Valeting in Neenah. And I've not been paid to say this right, and I've had a car done by Taft. It's ceramic coated, and it means on a wet day like this, we can take out the car, just with a wipe of a cloth, the paintwork comes up beautifully and perfectly. An absolutely gorgeous car, lovely original car as well. And of course, the original 16-inch alloys are still fitted, okay, with the 205, 55 or 16 wheels, okay? So, actually, sorry, not 55, 50, 205, 50 or 16 wheels. So, beautiful condition, well presented, and lovely under bonnet view, nice and original. So let's have a little look at the interior and talk about that. Now, just before we actually jump into the interior, I thought it would be worth mentioning one other thing. On the facelift model, there was a different headlamp system, but on the GR VR Aero, it was a standard HID, high intensity definition headlamp system used. Also, all of these were the facelift model. There was none of them the previous model, okay? But how do you tell a facelift and a pre-facelift apart? Well, easiest way is the front bumper, okay? On the facelift model, there's one single air intake, and you also have the fog lights and the indicators are split into their own separate units as well. You also have this lovely front splitter here, which is forward facing as well. The second way is going to be around the back. So jump around there with me and I'll show you how to tell it apart there. So the second way of telling if this is a facelift model is with this rear wing. This is known as the B wing, and you can see it's much more aggressive, much more standard, much more kind of standing forward and stuff, and aerodynamically suitable for the car as well. The other thing is, it's fitted as standard on a facelift, okay? It wasn't fitted as standard on a pre-facelift. Also, worth noting back here is this beautiful decal, very 90s, version R. So that's the VR, and that's how we know this is a VR. But how do we know it's an Aero GP by looking at it? Well, I'll show you that too. Well, to know it's an Aero is we look at the back and we see Series Aero GP and FTO. Now this, I absolutely love this graphic. I have always loved it. I don't know why more car manufacturers don't do it. It's FTO stamped into the bumper. Lovely script, lovely text. Actually looks really cool on the car. I'm a big fan of that, and I wish more manufacturers would do it, but unfortunately, such is the world we live in, they don't. Anyway, Series Aero GP version R. Beautiful. Okay, so you're very, very welcome to the interior of this FTO GP VR Aero. I keep giving it the full name, but it is such a special model, such a limited production. Like for the year 2000, which this particular one is, there's only 56 produced. Okay, so it's a really, really special car, and I want you to know just how special this is. Now, interior, usual 90s Japanese fare in here. We got hard plastics, we got different texture plastics, different texture again. We have a lovely Momo steering wheel, which I really do like. It is really nice to hold. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing massively interesting in here. It's just 90s fare Japanese, so you're going to have a little bit of style, but it's very, very functional. Now, what I will say is, while it may be functional, and while when it was new it may have gotten criticized for the plastics it used, it's all here, and it all works. And it all works the exact same way it did the day it left the factory. A couple of other quirks in here to talk about. It still has its JDM flare fitted, so all Japanese domestic market cars have to have a flare by regulation. This one still has one fitted. It has the original floor mats fitted. It has the original Momo steering wheel. It has the indicators on the correct side for right-hand drive market. Okay, a lot of people don't realize this. These are actually on the correct side. Electric windows. You also have this, I think it's funky little door handle. It's upside down. You pull that, the window drops a little bit, and out you get. You have electric mirrors as well. Now, what don't you have in here, okay? No leather interiors or any of that kind of nonsense, okay? This is 90s sports car, so you get cloth interior bucket seats, and they have this lovely FTO script stitched into them. Now, you might be wondering, why are the seats so blue, okay? The seats are blue because there was three color combinations offered on the FTO GR VR Aero, okay? And this particular car comes in Scotia white. I was going to say Nova Scotia, but Scotia white, which means it got the contrasting blue front seats. And I do say front seats because as standard, the rear seats are black, and it doesn't matter what color combination you go for, the rear seats are going to be black. If you got this car spec'd with passion red, you then got a contrasting black front seat inside with, again, the FTO script in there. And if you went for Pyrenees black on the exterior, because there was only three colors offered, you then got a contrasting red interior fitted to your car. So I suppose a little bit of Japanese quirkiness coming through there in the 1990s, okay? A little bit of quirkiness. Now, for anyone else who's wondering what on earth these dials are, you have a voltometer, you have a clock, you have rev counter, speedo, fuel gauge, and temperature gauge, and then your series of warning lights and so on and so forth. Other than that, it's a really, really nice, comfortable, spacious place to be for a sports car, okay? Now, when you're driving it, there is a lovely, as I say, it's more muted than an Integra 4-cylinder, which again has that lovely rasp, and I do like the rasp on these. But these are a V6, so they're going to be smoother, a little bit more throaty, but it's quite a nice engine. It's quite good when it's up and running, and very, very nice to drive as well, I must add. In fact, that's the main thing with these cars. These are still recognized as one of the best handling cars of the 1990s, if not the best, especially in front-wheel drive flavor, which these all came with, of course. But what I mean is it's one of the best front-wheel drive handling cars out there and available on the market. Now, when it came to the particular model designation, this is FTO GR VR Aero, there was a couple of different, I suppose, there was a couple of different things removed. So this was essentially meant to be the track-focused car. So your climate control system, well, that went. This particular one just has a basic air conditioning system fitted. You also lost things like the side skirts and so on and so forth, all to save weight. You also got a limited slip differential fitted. You have McPherson struts up front, multi-link rear suspension, and so on and so forth. And as I said, you got uprated anti-roll bars and things like that as well to improve handling. And that's pretty much where the Aero left us off. So it still had the standard 197 horsepower engine fitted at 7,500 RPM, about 220 foot-pounds of torque. And there's one or two things which I haven't actually covered yet performance-wise. I'm going to talk about them now. So I had to admit, I searched and searched and searched, and I couldn't find a definitive answer. So I think the answer to the question of what's the 0 to 60 time? 0 to 60 miles per hour, I have two figures quoted. I have 6.6 seconds and I have 7.3 seconds. Now, the reason for the discrepancy, as far as I can tell, is that JDM models were 6.6. The right-hand drive models that left Japan were slightly differently configured, and they came in at 7.3. 0 to 100 kilometers, for whatever reason, I have quoted 6.9 seconds on a JDM model, and I don't have a different top speed different 0 to 100 kilometers for models exported. Now, I also have 3 different top speeds for these cars, so bear with me on this, okay? So, standard Japanese top speed was limited to 112 miles per hour. That was it. That's as fast as you could go in this, about 180 kilometers per hour. However, if you de-restricted it, it could go all the way to 150 miles per hour. What's that, 242 kilometers per hour, something like that? Now, on models exported from Japan, the top speed was set at 130 miles per hour. Okay, so again, there's little discrepancies there. I couldn't pin down a solid answer, so I just want to let you know, they're the answers I came up with. Other than that, this car isn't about top speeds. It's about handling. It's about enjoyment. It's about looking damn cool. That beautiful wedge styling, aggressive front. This could be anything coming up behind you. The other thing is it has those massive flare arches, so very muscular looking up front. So great little car. Now, I do have one sad little thing, but I completely understand. So when the owner contacted me for this car, this is their baby. They absolutely love this car. Okay, but they said one thing. They said, this is the best FTO in Ireland. You can look at it, you can touch it, but you cannot drive it. So unfortunately, folks, it's there. I'm going to have to leave it for this week. I wanted to show you the car. I want to show you the brilliant cars that are out there. I was so happy the owner contacted me, but unfortunately, there's only one person allowed to drive this car, and it's not me, it's the owner. And that is absolutely fine. If you want to contact me and have your car feature on the channel, I'm happy enough if that's the term and condition you put with it. Of course, a lot of these cars would have disappeared. These would have been common enough in Ireland back in the day. There was quite a few imported, quite cool, that small engine, all that performance. But one thing finished these off. And it was also part of the reason I didn't push my luck with asking for a drive of this car. And that was insurance. Out of interest, I rang my insurer to see, could I put this on my policy? No, absolutely no. I don't know why, but they flat out refused to cover the FTO. That's it, and that is it. So we have had today the beautiful little brother of the Mitsubishi GTO, and that's what Mitsubishi referred to this car as itself, the little brother of the GTO. And what a little brother this is absolutely amazing. I'm delighted the owner contacted me and let me have a little look around it today. So listen, folks, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, join the channel, join the fun, and we'll see you all again. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.